This week on Government Matters.
The private sector is not happy at all with this plan. The private sector has always viewed 18F, which will basically be the centerpiece of this new organization, as a competitor.
The Technology Transformation Service is designed to improve cross-agency collaboration. But the private sector and federal watchdogs have concerns.
Vulnerabilities and exploit code has been around for a long time. It's just that the value associated with that code is now increasing.
The FBI paid gray hat hackers more than $1 million for a software vulnerability to the iPhone. We talk zero-day regulation.
It's a data format that brings all that information, financial, award, payments, everything together as one data set.
2 years after President Obama signed the bill into law, agencies have a Data Act schema to go on. Will they reach full compliance next May? Government Matters starts right now.
From ABC 7 and News Channel 8, this is Government Matters.
To our viewers around the world on the American Forces Network and here in the nation's capital, thanks for joining us. Government is the engine that runs this city. That's why Government Matters. Every week we'll bring you the top headlines in tech, security, and management. I'm your host, Morris Jones. In September of 2014, the FBI retired its old fingerprint system and replaced it with the next generation. The $1.2 billion program sends digital fingerprints to agents in the field and uses facial recognition technology to help them track down terrorists. Today, NGI is fully operational, but the program is not without controversy. Government Matters' Diane Cho got exclusive access to the FBI's biometrics campus in West Virginia. It's an area so restricted, even our crew needed a background check.
Fear, panic, and uncertainty. It's a scene that's become all too familiar as many have now become a part of a growing number of innocent victims in a world where everything can change in the blink of an eye. This teen has now survived 3 terrorist attacks.
I was covered in a lot of fluids, a lot of blood. A lot of that blood wasn't mine.
Since 9/11, the FBI has been trying to prevent another attack on American soil. The agency also helps support investigations involving international terrorism. Some of that work is done here at the FBI's Criminal Justice Information Services Division, which houses the largest database of criminal fingerprints and background information in the world. ABC 7 was given an exclusive behind-the-scenes look inside the 986-acre campus tucked away in Clarksburg, West Virginia, where it tests cutting-edge technology like the iris scan.
It's fast, it's accurate, it's non-contact.
Or searches a repository of criminal mugshots using a face recognition algorithm to try to identify someone through a photo. It's all a part of the agency's next-generation identification system.
We will look at the nose, very similar shape. The ears, very similar in shape.
After the recent terrorist attacks in Brussels, photos of the alleged suspects were made public quickly. The mysterious man seen in the hat was arrested more than 2 weeks later. Authorities say he admitted to being the man they had been looking for. But could this technology have helped Belgian authorities track him down even sooner?
It would be very tough to make an identification off of something like that. But is the technology out there that could help? Sure, maybe someday.
In order for it to work, the photo would have to be pretty good. But how good? Well, it would need to be taken straight on and up close, similar to your driver's license photo. But what if you were smiling, or your head was tilted, or there was bad lighting? The accuracy of the search could be thrown off.
It's a difficult process.
Once the results are back,
we'll go through each of these.
It's up to highly trained staff members to figure out if there's a likely candidate in the system that could give field agents a starting point to a name, address, or alias to verify to use as an investigative lead. The FBI says the photos it receives have to be obtained lawfully. Privacy groups like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, though, are raising concerns.
The biggest concerns with face recognition technology are the fact that it can be used at some point in the future to track people as they move about through society.
Technology, she believes, one day could potentially blur the line between protecting civil liberties and national security. For Government Matters, I'm Diane Cho.
In security matters, federal encryption legislation and the market for zero-day vulnerabilities. Last week, the FBI said it will not publicly disclose the method that allowed it to access a locked iPhone used by one of the San Bernardino attackers. The agency paid gray hat hackers more than $1 million for a software vulnerability. But the Bureau says it did not purchase the rights to technical details about how that method functions. Joining me with the latest is Yong-Gon Chon, CEO of Cyber Risk Management Companies. All right, let's start with an explanation of what happened here. What is a gray hat hacker, and what did the FBI need one for?
Sure. A gray hat hacker is an individual that has certain technical skills that knows how to break into certain kinds of computer security systems. They then have the ability to decide whether or not they want to use that information for evil or for good. And so that's the definition of what a gray hat hacker is.
Yang, the FBI says it did not purchase the rights to technical details about how that method functions. What does this mean, and why would the Bureau pursue that strategy?
So taking this strategy absolves the FBI from having any responsibility from facing any legal actions to disclose that information, Freedom of Information Act requests and things along those lines, so that they can have access to the information to do their jobs and proceed with law enforcement investigations without necessarily involving themselves in the politics of disclosing information that might fall into the wrong hands or get into an expensive legal battle, whether it's with Apple, Microsoft, or other individuals or companies that make mobile devices.
Good point. Makes sense. All right, now enter Congress. On April 13th, Senators Richard Burr and Diane Feinstein introduced draft legislation called the Compliance with Court Orders Act of 2016. Everyone else calls it the encryption bill. The tech community doesn't like it. President Obama doesn't either. So why? What's in it?
Yeah, so the main reason there's been such a backlash associated with this proposed legislation is the fact that the tech community looks at encryption as a means to provide safety and security to customers. The government also uses the means within its own guidance and its own regulations to protect federal information as well. And so the act would propose to remove those restrictions and require cooperation with law enforcement. And fundamentally, the issue is about trust. When you have data breaches that are widely publicized with OPM, with the IRS, State Department, there's no trust that the federal government will be able to effectively protect sensitive information that corporate America uses for being able to generate revenues and profits and being able to protect the privacy as well as the security of all their customers, which is why customers trust them.
You're exactly right. I mean, we've got a proven track record of what works and doesn't work here. All right. Meanwhile, there's a growing market for zero-day vulnerabilities. You spoke about this topic with John Gilroy last month. He called them malicious code brokers. Is that field regulated? Should it be?
Yeah, so the field really isn't regulated right now, and it's really within its formative stage, but it's not something new. Vulnerabilities and exploit code has been around for a long time. It's just that the value associated with that code is now increasing as organizations are launching bug bounties, as companies are looking to pay for that information to make their systems more secure.
Now, government won't be able to figure out the balance between privacy and security overnight. You advocate for a holistic approach and a stronger cyber workforce through security-level agreements. Explain that term for us.
Yeah, so one of the issues that many organizations struggle with today is they're trying to develop a workforce that can effectively protect their organization and effectively protect their customers. Right now, Forbes magazine reports that there's over 1 million security jobs worldwide that currently go unfilled, and that shortage is forecasted to go up to $1.5 million over the next 3 years. And so the challenge is many organizations look at implementing controls, and they look at implementing things like encryption, like strong authentication, to be able to protect the data. But ultimately, what it comes back to is the fact that organizations aren't focused on the outcomes. Shouldn't organizations be more focused on protecting against theft or protecting against data breaches? And why can't service providers provide a performance SLA or service level agreement that says, hey, we're going to protect the security just like we provide you 99% uptime for all of our systems that we host, whether that's out in the cloud or inside of a data center?
It's all great information on Government Matters. Yong-Gon Chon, CEO of Cyber Risk Management Companies. Thanks, Yong.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a look now at some of the rest of this week's top federal headlines. Federal News Radio reports the Department of Homeland Security will roll out a new series of incentive payments. The goal is to attract cyber experts from the private sector and keep them in government. It's a good chunk of change, adding between 20 and 25% to an employee's annual pay. The White House has issued new guidance on improving administrative functions through shared services. OMB Director Sean Donovan says the model will synchronize good government, consumer satisfaction, and provider entrepreneurship. More technical guidance is still to come. Oracle will purchase Arlington, Virginia-based energy analytics company Opower for $532 million. The deal is expected to close later this year. It's the latest cloud-based data acquisition for the computing giant. Straight ahead on Government Matters, GSA remade. The General Services Administration just announced a third service line. It's built around 18F, but the private sector and some federal watchdogs have concerns. We talk Technology Transformation Service next. In Tech Matters, the Technology Transformation Service. This week, the General Services Administration announced their third service line. They already had a public building service focused on real estate, as well as a federal acquisition service focused on, you guessed it, acquisitions. Number 3 will focus on tech. Joining me with the latest is Dan Verton, executive editor at MeriTalk. Dan, this is a major reorganization for GSA. What elements will fall under this new tech service?
Yes, the new tech service, Morris, will include the Office of Citizen Services and Innovative Technologies, the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program, and an organization called 18F, which is basically GSA's digital services IT consulting arm.
Now, the new tech service is designed to improve cross-agency collaboration. Here's how GSA puts it. Creating a dedicated service to meet this need will enable GSA to help partner agencies better build, buy, and share technology, and thereby improve the public's experience with government. What about the private sector, Dan? Will the new tech service improve their experience with government?
Well, from everything I'm hearing, Morris, the private sector is not happy at all with this plan. The private sector has always viewed 18F, which will basically be the centerpiece of this new organization, as a competitor to the private sector. They are providing government-backed consulting services and technology development services to other government agencies that the government could get commercially.
Now, we've been talking the fact that you're tracking concerns about 18F. GSA's Inspector General is reviewing their financial management practices, and so is the GAO. Tell me more about that.
Right. The Inspector General at the GSA is actually looking into $250,000 in seed money that was apparently provided to 18F, and they didn't have the appropriate interagency agreements in place. But making matters worse, the Government Accountability Office right now is in the middle of an audit of the entire government's digital services to include 18F, and everything that I'm hearing, including folks who are very close to this audit, are going to say that when it comes out in June, it's not going to paint a very pretty picture of what's happening.
All right, so put all of this into context for us, Dan. Government takes a lot of heat for being stodgy and overly bureaucratic. Meanwhile, GSA wants to be on the front lines of federal innovation. Well, have they found the right balance here?
From everything that I'm hearing from both private sector and public sector officials, this is really not the way to go. And in fact, I'm being told that this is really about insulating 18F, which is GSA's baby at the moment, from the presidential transition. They're afraid that when the new administration takes over, whether it's Democratic or Republican, that 18F would not survive that transition, and creating this new service would actually insulate them. And in addition, there's also a $3.1 billion White House revolving fund for IT modernization that I'm told GSA is hoping to be able to manage and oversee that. But basically, the senior administration officials are saying outright that there's no way that they would allow that all that money, that $3.1 billion, to be put under GSA or 18F control.
Dan Verton, executive editor at MeriTalk. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Morris.
Government contractors ask this question all the time. How can we plan for our next big meeting and position ourselves to win the contract? This week, GC Tech, the Government Contractor Training and Education Consortium, offered a few tips during a seminar at the Tower Club. Keynote speaker Lee Doherty says it's an important topic. Many contractors master the technical details, but are not as proficient face-to-face. He says prepare an effective agenda, find out who's in the meeting, and tailor your presentation to that audience. Afterwards, ask the right questions.
What changes are you going to make that came out of the meeting? What feedback did you get from your capabilities brief, from your presentation, from the debrief, if it's a post-award debrief for the government? How are you going to change your company? And if you're not doing that sort of after-action review after a meeting and making changes, then the meeting was ineffective.
Doherty adds it's about making the next meeting even better. Now on to my next meeting with the man who wrote the early versions of the Data Act. The deadline for compliance is only 1 year away. Will agencies make it on time? We talk management matters straight ahead. In Management Matters, a progress report on the Data Act. 2 years ago this month, President Obama signed the Digital Accountability and Transparency Act into law. It's designed to make federal spending data more accessible, more searchable, and more consistent, launching a new era of data-driven government. The Treasury Department and the Office of Management and Budget are leading implementation, but it's a heavy lift. For more, I'm joined by Hudson Hollister, Executive Director at the Data Coalition. He drafted early versions of the Data Act on Capitol Hill. Hudson, bring us up to date. Where was federal data before this law, and where is it going?
Thanks for having me, Morris. Before the Data Act, federal spending was expressed as disconnected documents and non-interoperable databases, but the Data Act says we need to have a consistent format that brings it all together. Last Friday, implementing the Data Act from 2 years ago, the Treasury Department finished the format. They announced what's called the Data Act Schema, version 1.0. It's a data format that brings all that information, financial, award, payments, everything together as one data set.
All right, I want to follow up with the Treasury releasing its Data Act schema. It offers guidance, as you said, to agencies on conforming to 57 Data Act elements. Explain further.
Well, this can be awfully technical, but the important thing is that the schema explains how these different aspects of spending all fit together. By May 2017, all the agencies are required to express their spending information using this format. That means the whole thing is searchable together. It means public transparency, but it also means better internal management. It means that federal CFOs will be able to bring together financial and award information, which used to be separate, in a single view.
Hudson, last month during a House Oversight Committee hearing, officials from OMB raised concerns about funding. They requested $92 million in the president's fiscal year 2016 budget, but only received $31 million. That's about a third. Will funding be a problem here? Why is it worth the investment?
Well, every agency is already investing in modernizing financial systems. The Data Act may be delayed by resources, but it won't be stopped, because as these systems are changed, which in many cases is planned already, they can be built to accommodate the new data format.
Meanwhile, OMB is in the thick of readiness reviews. The question, will agencies be ready by May of 2017? That's the deadline for Data Act compliance. Here's what OMB Controller Dave Mader had to say.
So I don't think anybody is deliberately slow-rolling us in the implementation. I think there are challenges, and I think that agencies, depending on their size and complexity, are starting to realize the lift that they have between now and next January to really get ready with the second quarter data, which is the quarter of data that's going to be loaded in May of 17.
All right, Hudson, what do you think? Will your organization be celebrating full compliance this time next year?
I can't tell you about next year yet, but I can tell you that we are celebrating agencies that have already embraced the data format. Agencies like the SBA, which took a preliminary version of the Data Act format, brought all of its spending information together, and as Deputy CFO Tim Gribben will tell you, became able to see all of its portfolio in one view, which was impossible before. We'll be celebrating agencies like the SBA at our Data Act Summit, which happens in 3 weeks on May 26th in Washington.
All right, good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Hudson Hollister, Executive Director at the Data Coalition. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll turn from management to final matters straight ahead. By presidential proclamation, the first week of May in 2016 was named Public Service Recognition Week, a time to honor civil servants who inspire optimism in sectors throughout our country. Once again, it also coincided with the kickoff for the Service to America Medals, or SAMMYs. There are 32 finalists this year. We'll introduce you to many of them right here on Government Matters before the September 20th awards ceremony in Washington. Here's a quick preview of some of the stories to come.
Basically, I led a team that was looking at an emerging terrorist threat and was against aviation. We assembled a group of people from TSA, DHS, Secret Service, and the FBI. We examined the threat, we did some analysis of it, and we looked at ways of mitigating it. During the first threat, a second threat emerged, and my team jumped on that as well.
We have been working very, very hard over the last couple of years at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services to bring the voice of the customer into the design of customer service tools that are incredibly accessible 24/7, but they're also meaningful.
So I'm a cyber investigator with the Secret Service in our New York field office. I'm in the New York Electronic Crimes Task Force, and the Secret Service, we have 39 Electronic Crimes Task Force around the country and then 2 overseas. And the ECTFs, that's the abbreviation, we investigate cyber crimes that affect the financial industry. And so I'm here today because of some of the work I did on investigations of cyber crimes.
The high-path avian influenza outbreak in 2014 and 15 was an unusual strain of flu. We mobilized over 700 of our USDA employees to go out there, in addition to about 3,000 contractors to support us to depopulate those birds so that we didn't spread the virus.
Remarkable stories, remarkable people. And that's the latest from Washington. Thanks for being with us. I'm Morris Jones. We know your week is filled with other matters. Save this half hour for us.